If you're watching this video, you're almost certainly insulin resistant to some degree, and unless you change your ways, your life will probably be shortened by 10 years. Hello, and welcome to another video from Keto A Go Go. Yes, it's been a long time. I haven't uploaded a video for a couple of months. I've not been following keto. I haven't been following Exante. I've been backsliding into my old eating habits, and I've put back on 3 of the 19 kilos I'd lost by mid-October, which answers some questions, I suppose. What it answers is, once I do lose the weight that I want to lose and achieve my target, what's my next step? Well, I think my next step, and the only step that will be medically safe for me to take, bearing in mind my diabetes, is to maintain a low-carb, high-fat diet. I know I've said that it's possible to get rid of my diabetes, and of course it is possible, but that isn't to say that I couldn't provoke my system into going haywire once again. And that has been the case over the past few months. But I've been researching once again. I've been looking for trustworthy advice. Looking for trustworthy advice can be fraught with pitfalls, none more so than with our own British National Health Service, which still gives out very poor advice and does little, if anything, to prevent the tidal wave of diabetes cases that, once the health effects of being diabetic are taken into consideration, will surely spell the end of the health service as we know it. Why do I say that? Well, I'll give you a few figures and we'll do the math between us. In 2017, there were 3.7 million diabetics in Britain, according to Public Health England. You have to understand that 90% of these are type 2 diabetic, 10% type 1. By 2019, that figure had risen to 4 million. By 2025, it will be 4.5 million, and by 2030, 5 million. And nothing much is being done to put a stop to that. The obesity crisis will strangle the life out of the NHS. It will make it unaffordable. The diabetes crisis will strangle the life out of the NHS. It just won't be sustainable. And it all comes down to insulin resistance. And moreover, the NHS are allowing this problem to develop. Now that's a pretty strong accusation to make, but I'm going to attempt to justify it from my own point of view. Tell me if you agree. There is a comment section down below. So let me start by first asking you some questions about how you are feeling lately. Are you overweight, and are you finding that losing weight is almost impossible? Are you tired all the time, even when you've had plenty of sleep? Do you get up in the night to go for a pee? Do you like to have a nap after a big meal? Are you affected by an unquenchable thirst at times? Have your big toenails changed colour or shape? Are they starting to curl over? Another one, do you suffer from excessive hunger? Are you snacking even though you don't really feel that you should be hungry? Have you noticed increasing itchiness, particularly around the feet or around your genital area? Has your vision deteriorated over the past 5 to 10 years? And do you find that small wounds, such as scratches or insect bites, take much longer to heal these days? You might think that most of these are just signs of getting old. Middle-age spread and needing reading glasses and having a habit of nodding off after dinner. But they're also signs of something else much more sinister. Insulin resistance. And it's something you need to speak with your GP about. So, make an appointment and have your blood sugar checked. Now, this is important. You should ask for a GTT, which does not include gin or tonic, by the way. It's a glucose tolerance test, sometimes referred to as an OGTT, which is an oral glucose, etc., etc. What happens is that you go to the doctor having had nothing to eat or drink for 12 hours. Your blood sugar level is taken. This is the base level. And then you're given a glucose drink. And you sit there, and then your blood sugar is measured a couple of more times over the next couple of hours. And the results will show how well your body copes with dietary sugars. Obviously, the higher the count, the closer to being a diabetic you are. And I guarantee you're a lot closer than you thought. Now, hopefully, you aren't yet a member of the T2D club, type 2 diabetes mellitus. Doctors tend to put people into categories because it's easier. Either you're a diabetic, or you are pre-diabetic, or you're not. But our bodies don't act that way. They never have done, and they don't do with any condition whatsoever. We drift into pre-diabetes and we drift into diabetes all in blissful ignorance because our glucose tolerance is not being monitored by our GPs. And that's what makes me pissed off with the NHS. Some people say, so what? It's only diabetes, right? Well, let me tell you some of the health problems that diabetes provokes. It's proved to provoke further down the line, and it might put into context what I'm trying to say. If you're diabetic, you're at greater risk of developing any of the following: heart attack, strokes, vascular dementia, which is often referred to as type 3 diabetes, by the way, to let you know how strongly it's linked with diabetes. Amputation, blindness, nerve damage, impotence, kidney failure, quite a few different types of cancer, bone and joint problems, and of course, obesity. Now, I'm sure you can imagine the cost of treatments to cure or treat people suffering from that list, and that should make you as angry as I am that all of the above is preventable. All of the above could have been nipped in the bud. Insulin resistance, the cause of all those, can be spotted early with an inexpensive test that would serve as an early warning system. I mean, for crying out loud, if they wanted me to, I'd take my own glucose drink with me. But the NHS will just measure your blood sugar, if you can convince them to do so. They'll take a measure, and if your blood sugar is not yet in the diabetic range, they send you packing. What I believe should be happening is that every adult in Britain is screened at least annually using the GTT or the OGTT method, however many T's there are in it. It gives a much better viewpoint of how your body is coping with the food you shove down your throat. We're all pretty familiar with a car. Most of us even have one. So, imagine the speedo showing the speed between 20 and 40 miles an hour. And imagine that 20 being the low point and 40 being the high point of your blood sugar. That's your blood sugar range, okay? And as long as the speed is between 20 and 40, as long as your blood sugar is within a certain range, the doctor is happy and he will push you out the door. But it's just a snapshot though, and it doesn't tell the story of what's going on. Now, the other dial in your car is the tachometer. It basically shows how hard the engine is working to maintain that 20 to 40 miles an hour speed limit. This, if you like, is a measure of how hard your system is working to maintain the blood sugar range you're asking of it. Okay, so your pancreas regulates the production of insulin, which is a hormone that controls the amount of glucose, sugar, that is allowed into your bloodstream. That's its sole function, to prevent an oversupply of sugar in your bloodstream. It's very, very dangerous. In normal circumstances, any excess glucose gets stored in the liver and it gets retrieved when you need it. When you're asleep, for instance, when excess sugar is consumed, it can also store glucose in fat cells nearby in your liver, for instance, which it then locks off to prevent them from being used until it decides they are needed. So now you understand why people develop middle-age spread and why it's so difficult to shift it. Because your insulin levels are just so high. Put simply, it's because more and more of those fat cells near to the liver are being filled up. And as we become more sedentary, the need to burn that energy drops. And so those fat cells never get opened up. Middle-age spread. Obviously, when more sugar is consumed, insulin production is also ramped up, and the RPM of the pancreas increases to try to cope, to maintain that speed, to maintain that blood sugar range. As still more sugar is consumed, the pancreas might produce insulin that doesn't function quite as well, or isn't received quite so well with the fat cells, or it might not be able to find adequate fat cells nearby because they're all full. So in this case, more glucose does end up circulating in the bloodstream because the insulin isn't functioning so well. A symptom of too much sugar in the bloodstream is thirst, and another is fatigue. So if you're always sleepy, you're always thirsty, go get this tested. Now, so you understand why you nod off after a big meal and why you always want a cuppa afterwards. Because blood sugar rises and the pancreas is operating at full capacity to try to cope. And excess sugar is already in the blood, hence the need to sleep, hence the need to drink something. As insulin resistance increases, it has to work, your pancreas has to work at full tilt more often just to cope with the sugar. And eventually, because we just keep taking it, eventually it can't. Your body's tachometer is now redlining, and the speed your blood sugar moves out of the desired range in reaction. You've damaged your pancreas and it will no longer function correctly. Now you go to your doctor because you don't feel well. You tell him you're not feeling too well, and he tests your blood sugar, and hey presto, he pronounces you're now diabetic. The GTT, the OGTT test would have shown in microcosm just how hard your pancreas was working all the time as you built yourself up to becoming a diabetic. So tell me, why aren't they doing it? It's easy, isn't it? Well, the cynic in me suspects that our NHS doctors believe that we simply aren't listening. That they'd be wasting their breath trying to advise us to change our ways. They've probably explained it all to thousands of people, and barely a one has taken a blind bit of notice. Perhaps they feel that people just don't want to change, that they might take the advice for a short while, but would slide back into the same bad habits after a while. And so they wait until we cross the line into full-blown diabetes, into the danger zone, and God knows I was there, and then they prescribe us tablets. Mine are metformin, as are most people's, I think. I take 4 a day. They don't provide a solution, they're not a cure, they just help my wonky insulin to do its job. But if I overdo it on the sugar, on the carbohydrates, everything still goes haywire. My blood sugar goes through the roof. Neither my insulin nor the metformin can control it. And damage is still being done to my system. and my lifespan shortens just that little bit more. Join me in part 2 of this mini-series, where I'll discuss the greatest effect of insulin resistance, obesity, and how to deal with it. Thanks for watching. Take care now.